Okay, fraud is nothing but intentional mistakes, right? Error is unintentional mistake. Fraud is an intentional mistake. Okay, somebody does something to deceive or to benefit something, okay, um, unethically. This is what is fraud. So we have frauds in three categories. One is fraudulent financial reporting. What does it mean? You're actually cooking up your books, okay, reporting wrong financials to maybe to hike your share value, to show an increased profit, maybe to get funding from certain investors. All these are fraudulent financial reporting, right? Uh, Another one is misappropriation of assets. What is misappropriation of assets? Stealing company assets, embezzlement schemes, defalcation. Okay, these are misappropriation of assets, right? This is another fraud. Third one is illegal acts. Okay, for example, if you're working for a bank, if you're helping someone to launder money, that's an illegal act, right? So these are fraudulent activities that are involved in corporate world. One is fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets, and the third one is uh, illegal acts. All right. Now, if you see fraud, you have something called a fraud triangle here. Okay, what is this fraud triangle? Basically, you have three things whenever fraud happens. One is incentives and pressure, second is an opportunity, third is rationalization. What is incentives and pressure? Let's say, uh, incentives would be something like, your shareholders, you're a CEO, and the shareholders tells you that, if you increase the market value of our share, right, if you show a good EPS this year, we would give you a bonus of $100,000. Okay, that's an incentives. What's a pressure? Sometimes the shareholders tells you um, that we've been hitting losses from last several years, so if this year, if you're going to hit a loss, you would be fired. So basically, that's a pressure on you, right? So that pressure will force you to commit a fraudulent activities, right? Incentives, okay, on the positive side, would basically, uh, you know, uh, uh, you know, inspire you to do something fraudulent activities. So, but just pressure or incentives would make the fraud. Let's say you have an opportunity to do that, okay, and you have a rationalization attitude. What is a rationalization attitude? Justifying your wrongdoings. That's what is rationalization attitude. So let's say you had a pressure, you had an incentives, you had an opportunity to do that, you were in a position to commit fraud, you were a CEO, so therefore you can guide people, right? This is how it has to be done, and they'll do it. That's what is opportunity, by virtue of your position, right? And you had a rationalization attitude. Rationalization attitude is what? Justifying your wrongdoing. So if these three things are present, that's when the fraud will happen. Okay, let's say you had a pressure but there is no opportunity, it wouldn't happen, right? Or let's say you had an incentives and opportunity also was there, but you didn't have a rationalization attitude. You don't think that it's right to do that. You wouldn't do that, right? So therefore, a fraud would happen when the fraud triangles are present, right? Pressure on incentives, opportunity, and rationalization attitude, right? So that's what we see. Fraud risk model. Triangle model recognizes three characteristics of fraud: opportunity, rationalization, pressure, or incentives. Okay, all three characteristics are hard to observe. Even if one of three characteristics seem to be present in an organization, uh, or not seen. Okay, if it is not there also, it doesn't mean that fraud has not occurred. Okay, still fraud can occur, right? But what we are saying, whenever fraud is there, there is a high chance of these things uh, present in that. Okay. All right. So when we actually discuss the ethics for organizations, um, we have to always think at the tone at the top. Okay, the tone at the top. The tone at the top is what? Basically, the leadership. Okay, we know that entities' ethical behavior starts from tone at the top. If the CEO is not an ethical man, he's not a person with integrity. All his subordinates, okay, the mid-level managers are not going to be ethical. They will also follow the CEO's thoughts, right? Same will carry down to lower level management and also to the bottom line employees. So, a company's and entities' ethical behavior will mostly depend on what is the tone at the top. How was the tone at the top? How was the top management? Right? Very, very important. If he is an ethical person, the CEO, the topmost official in the company is an ethical person, that will have a reflection to the bottom lines of the entity. Okay, that's what is tone at the top. So how would a company establish ethical behavior for organization? You should hire right people. You should do everything possible to hire the right persons. Probably you can do a background check or something on how on your employees whom you're planning to hire, right? Are they people with ethical values? Or at the time of interviews, you could actually throw some ethical related questions to them. Okay, ask them how would you think in the situations? Is it right or wrong to do? All right, gauge those answers from them. Based on that, okay, you decide whether to hire him or not. Okay, so basically it's important to get the right person on the board, right? It's always better than getting everybody and then managing them. It's always better that we hire the right people on the board. Not only hiring them, you're going to also train them. So oftentimes you should have trainings done, okay, on ethical matters. Okay, so not only you send them for financial reporting training, you send them for let's say marketing training, you send them for IT related training, you should also send them for ethical related training, right? You should also inculcate this thinking of ethics in them, right? As we discussed in the first session, ethics is, after all, a learned skill, right? You can really learn to be ethical. So, therefore, you should train them. So, get the right people on the board, train them, and also lead them, right? Lead them properly or lead them ethically. Okay, inculcate the feeling of ethics in the organization. This is what you have to do in the organization to have an ethical behavior, overall ethical behavior in the company. So first the tone at the top has to be there. Then you should hire, train, and lead them. Okay, so how do you measure that you are an ethical company? Okay, how do you measure that? You should maybe you have a written code of ethics, right, on all your walls, right? Beautiful hangings on the walls, but that shouldn't be just lying on the wall, right? Hanging on the wall. You should actually gauge how is it going, right? Are we an ethical company? How do you rate yourself? How do you measure your ethical behavior? So how do you do that? Okay, first of all, you should see is the code of conduct is being adhered to. Is it? Do we have written rules, right? Uh, Also, you send certain surveys done, right? When the employees are having the final appraisals on an yearly basis, you should actually provide columns in the appraisal forms to rate themselves in ethical matters also. on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Let them know that ethics are important, right? So let them gauge themselves, okay? Or you could actually have periodical surveys done, okay? Send them letters, okay, and ask them on how they feel about the ethics of the organization is. Do they believe that the organization does not have any discriminatory policies? Okay. uh, what are their views? Okay, so if you get certain negative comments, right, take them seriously. Okay, those are real. Okay, take them seriously. Okay. um, you should have hotlines, ethical hotlines set up, right, so that people who have a difficulty in knowing their names known to others on any matters, they might use the anonymous hotlines, right, where their identity is not known, right? They might call you up, maybe a compliance department within the organization, maybe an ethical department within the organization. They might call up and share certain issues, right? You could actually see that, okay, depending on number of circumstances that or number of issues that you're getting, okay, how strong is your ethical behavior inside your company, right? You could have uh, structured interviews, right? Oftentimes call up your employees and talk to them, right? Share with them, right? So, or during people when they exit, okay, when they resign and go, call them, have an exit interview, okay, ask them about ethical issues that they gone through, right? Or you could have behavioral games, right? Behavioral games can be conducted. So this is how you're measuring your ethics in overall organization. This is how you can really measure. Okay. All right. So that's about uh, ethics within an organization, right? And then we're going to get into social responsibility. Okay. Now these are things that are spoken now. Uh, those are very often spoken now. Social responsibilities of companies. Earlier, companies never used to believe that uh, there was something called a social responsibility on them, right? People used to believe that companies are supposed to make profits, and they are only supposed to make profits. They don't have any social responsibility. Now these thoughts are changing. Okay, the government starts understanding this. All right, so therefore that's a reason in India, if you see that we have a 2% on the average net income of the previous 3 years to be set aside for social causes. Okay, we often call it CSR. Okay, corporate social responsibility funds for companies. They're supposed to spend it for social causes, right? Why is that so? Because these companies are sustaining in the society, okay, and they are actually utilizing the resources of the society. So they have a responsibility to give it back to the society, right? So they cannot be away from society. They are a part of the society, so they have a responsibility for the society. And that's why the social responsibility concept comes all together. Okay, so there is something called a CSR pyramid, which was actually developed by R.K. Carroll, and it has got four views on social responsibility, and the pyramid looks like this. Why is it so? Because it has a shape of pyramid, right? So it says that companies are supposed to be making profits. There's nothing wrong with making profits. Okay, there's nothing wrong with making profits. Companies should make profit. The bottom line is dependent on uh, companies making profits, right? So be profitable, the foundation upon which all the others rest. Now once you're profitable, then you have to abide by the laws and rules of the country, right? So basically, uh, that's the second layer on the pyramid. Legal responsibility. The third layer is ethical responsibility. Okay, companies are supposed to be ethical, uh, obligations to do what is right, just, and fair. Okay, so you have to be playing an ethical role in the society. Okay, do ethical business, right? So first you got to be profitable. Second, you have to abide by the laws and regulations. Third is you got to be ethical. You should be doing ethical business. The last layer on the top is the philanthropic responsibility. What is philanthropic responsibility? As I said, entities are actually utilizing the resources from the society. So the entities have a responsibility to give it back to the society, right? So that's where um, they have to actually spend money, okay, on social causes, right? So these are the four layers in Carroll's pyramid of social responsibility: economic responsibility, legal responsibility, ethical responsibility, and philanthropic responsibility. Right? You got to be profitable. You got to be abiding by the laws and regulations of the country. You should be doing ethical business, and also you should be able to give it back to the society from where you utilize resources. So you have an economic responsibility, and then you have legal responsibility, ethical responsibility, and philanthropic responsibility. We also have another approach, which is called the triple bottom line, often called the three P's approach. Three P's approach. Okay, this is about sustainability. Okay, of companies. So it talks about companies are supposed to be making profits. Of course, if companies don't make profits, they don't sustain, right? So just like how they are making profits, they should also deal with people, deal with the employees, deal with the other people connected with it, suppliers, customers, right? They should also be ethical with them, and also they should actually focus on the planet also. So you shouldn't be harming the planet. You shouldn't be harming the environment. If you are harming the environment, of course, you cannot be sustainable, right? You cannot be a sustainable companies. Oftentimes, people will, the regulatory authorities will come and probably close down your business. So if you have to be sustainable, you got to be focusing on the three P's: profit, people, and planet. All right, that's called the triple bottom line approach. So here is it: sustainability comes when you are actually making profits, okay, making you're considering your people and considering the environment that you work in. You cannot be a pollutant, right? You should do all methods to save the nature, right? That's what is the three P's approach, or the sustainability approach, the triple bottom line approach. Next, we have certain ethical issues on international scenarios. We know something called Fcpa Act of 1977, okay, wherein American companies, specifically issuer companies registered with SEC, right, public companies in the US, or its subsidiaries, uh, to be paying any bribes, any forms of bribes to foreign officials, okay, in a foreign country to get some contracts, right? You cannot be, you can get heavy fines in the US if you happen to be caught on that, right? So it prevents you from, it forbids you to paying any kinds of bribes, any forms of bribes. Maybe you call it a commission, you call it whatever it is. If it is proven that you paid something uh, to get a contract, to get something done in a foreign country, you paid someone in the foreign of governmental officials, then basically you're in trouble under 1977 FCPA Act. You have the similar act in the UK, which is called the Foreign, which is called the UK Bribery Act. Okay, UK Bribery Act is just the counterpart of Fcpa Act. Okay, you have certain policies of US government which is called embargoing, right? What is embargoing? Embargo means, with certain specific countries, you don't have a business connection. For example, US has a sanction against Iran these days. It had a sanction against South Africa when South Africa was believed to be having certain issues with the blacks there. All right. Uh, so these uh, these are certain policies to embargo or not to embargo. Sometimes government decides, okay, let's go on just the opposite of embargoing. Okay, uh, what is embargo? If things are not as per your ethical thoughts in a different country, you wouldn't want to do any kind of business relations there. Okay, you wouldn't want to get into that. Okay, what they have is with Iran is more or less a sanction, a financial economic sanction. But with what they had on South Africa was an embargo. Okay, embargo is a word related with ethical issues. Okay, so you don't want to get associated with that people whom they don't value ethics. Okay, that's what is embargo. But sometimes you decide not to embargo. Sometimes you think that the ethics in that country is not correct, so we would go set up something there and teach them how has to be dealt with ethics, right? That's just opposite of embargo. So these are the areas, the third section of section F in part 2 CMA. Okay, and uh, these are the areas that we need to focus on: business for, sorry, ethics for individual